After hearing Ken Seals talk about the preparation for the Alamo Bowl, all my mind kept going to is, dang, I wish he had another year of eligibility. Oh yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? I am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, host of your favorite one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday, the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. We close out today's episode with a look at TCU men's basketball. It is time to win games. Enough being competitive. It is time to win games. Segment 2 is a little bit of a conspiracy theory. The NCAA is on the verge of basically giving everybody 5 years of eligibility. And I think the NCAA is in partnership with the NFL in doing this. But segment 1 starts off with Ken Seals, who honestly, after listening to him sit down for an hour with Trey Boykin, I couldn't help but wish, dang, I wish Seals had another year of eligibility. My mind kept floating to what could have been. And I understand. I'm probably thinking the same way that TCU fans all over the Metroplex, all over the country are thinking. What could have been if Ken Seals was our starting quarterback? That's a question I've seen asked many times. But typically, it's said instead of Josh Hoover. That competition happened, and they chose not to do it. It is what it is. But I can't help but wondering, what if Ken Seals had another year of eligibility? Not going retroactively and playing the 2025 or 2024 season with Ken Seals as my quarterback. What if I got to play 2026 and he got to feed off of that energy from the Alamo Bowl? When I listened to what he was doing and what he had to deal with, the performance he put on became even more impressive after listening to the obstacles. So it's funny that Seals hasn't played in basically 3 years, right? Like he basically hasn't played football in 3 seasons. But this is a guy who felt like he was playing the best football of his career. Though all of that was seen in practice, he felt better than he had ever felt before. So I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, cool. That makes sense. That tracks. I follow. Cool. But when you see what he did against USC, yeah, I mean, it kind of looks like a guy who was probably playing his best football. It looks like a guy who probably played his best game. Now, I thought that there was the emotion that came to that. I thought maybe some of the opt-outs came to that. I thought the adrenaline of playing your final game for the school that you grew up rooting for probably played to that. I thought there was a lot of factors that maybe weren't replicable going into another season or just going into another game at some point. But after listening, the mental is so sharp. The reason I wish I would have seen what Ken Seals could have been for TCU is because his mental and his mentality, above all, are so sharp to me. So if you were here yesterday, you heard the real reason Josh Hoover left, and Ken Seals detailed it. And one of the things that we talked about was the timing of the decision to opt out of the bowl game. Hoover knew he was going to leave TCU before he knew he was going to opt out the bowl game. And I asked the question of hypothetically, what would have happened if he did play that game? What if he would have announced he was going to leave and still wanted to play? What if he played and then announced he was going to leave? How could that have changed how Josh Hoover is looked at by many TCU fans? I'm here with another hypothetical, but it's based off of that because Seals didn't get the entire bowl practices, let alone an entire season to prepare for this. He got 3 practices, I believe he said. It was 10 days. Those practices were spread out, but it was 10 days. He got a week and a half to fully prepare to play USC. This is coming off the heels of him saying he hadn't watched film in months. He hadn't prepared to be the starter in months. So thankfully, Josh Hoover didn't go down with injury during the year because Seals would have had to jumpstart all of his preparation. But They say practice like you're going to play, prepare like you're going to play. Ken Seals put that to bed. Ken Seals knew he wasn't going to play. They weren't going to bench Josh Hoover. That just wasn't going to happen. And one thing I'll say is this clearly showed me that he probably didn't need much ramp up time, because he got 3 practices. He wasn't watching film. He wasn't really preparing like that. They said that they didn't get much scout team reps throughout the year because they didn't have enough bodies. They just didn't have enough bodies to do a lot of scout team reps. So with that being the case, it was difficult for him to prepare physically. He chose not to prepare mentally, right? And he just checked out. Like, I'm a backup quarterback, my final year eligibility. I'm going to enjoy this time. That's obstacle number 1. No preparation for months, probably extremely rusty. Then he comes in, doesn't have a lot of practices to shake that rust off. The other thing is USC came in and played a completely different defense than seen on film. So that was something that was interesting to me that Seals discussed. Seals discussed the fact that they did practice, obviously, and they prepared for a certain type of defense, players aside. There was going to be players who opted out, but they expected a certain philosophy. They expected a certain set of looks. They studied it the entire time. Get to the game, and it's not that. I think he said they had a single high. No, I think he said that they prepared to do too high, a lot of too high, or see a lot of too high from USC. And then they win a lot of single high drop coverage. I think that's what he said. But the point is, regardless if it changed from cover 3 to cover 4, right? Regardless of what it was, you studied a base defense that looked like this, let's just say 80, 90% of the time. I'm throwing out a number. And instead, you got something else 80, 90% of the time. And this is your first time playing a game in years. Yes, you got in against Abilene Christian, but like, this is your first time playing a game as a starter in years. That could mess you up. You're already trying to shake up the rust or shake off the rust. And now you have to deal with changing looks. You have to deal with things you completely didn't prepare for. You go in like a deer in headlights, right? You're just naked in the woods, nothing to cover you, but your base knowledge of football. What does he do? What does Ken Seals do? He diagnoses this in the second quarter, and you saw him improve. So now I'm seeing the quick processing. Now I'm seeing the ability to adjust quickly. I'm seeing all of these aspects that I want in a quarterback. Ken Seals is showing me. I can't help but wonder, what if he had another year? The mental is there. The mental is sharp. Even though it was rusty, he started figuring those things out. To me, that's check number 1. Now you have to get to ability. And I thought he showed the ability on multiple occasions. I remember another one, the rusty times when he got hit. He spoke about that, I think, in the post-game press conference, where he got hit and he just fumbled standing up. It was the most, oh, I'm here moment, right? Oh, what the heck? Because he never hit the ground. He just fumbled. He got hit, didn't hit the ground, but the ball did hit the ground. So it was an interesting situation, but you've seen a guy shaking off the cobwebs. You've seen a guy trying to get back into game speed, maybe not game shape, but game speed. And he eventually figured it out. And the fact that he figured it out so quickly, the fact that he figured out the mental aspect of it so quickly, the fact that when the game was coming down to the wire, he didn't want to get 3 points. He didn't want to go to OT. He was trying to finish it. He was trying to close it out. That aggressiveness is something that I desire in my quarterback as well. So all of these things to me play a part in why it is that I wished that he could have another year of eligibility. And maybe on top of everything, just the momentum that comes from an Alamo Bowl victory like that. Feel how you want to feel about the bowl game. Feel like, I don't care, right? It's not a premier bowl. It's not like you went to the Rose Bowl pre-college football playoffs and you won it with a backup quarterback. And oh man, I wonder what this guy could be. But I was in my group chat with the Saint Squad show, and one of the people texted me and was like, man, y'all got a big win last night. Your guy looks good. I said, well, unfortunately, no eligibility, right? Actually, I think I said that was the backup. I believe that's what I said. The backup, he said, man, you might have something in that guy. That was the response about Ken Seals that came from somebody who just watched the game, didn't cover the story, didn't understand the magnitude of Josh Hoover opting out. He just thought, oh, that's your backup quarterback? You could have something there moving forward. Unfortunately, the whole eligibility thing didn't necessarily work. But this was a great moment. Ken Seals felt like he could actually win. He felt like he actually had people on his side. One of the funnier moments from the interview is him saying how everybody talked about the time he spent at Vandy and all of the games that he played, but he only won like 2. He's I only won like 2 games, and none of them were against P5 competition or P4 competition. This was his first time beating a power conference team in his entire career. What a special moment. What a way to close out your eligibility. Now, he did play quite a few years, but if anything is, or if these new rumblings are going to go down, I don't think that Ken Seals in the length of his career is going to be abnormal moving forward. Actually, I believe it's going to be exactly what other teams do. He spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in college, and guess what? That's going to be the norm because the NCAA and the NFL are working together, and I'm going to tell you why and how. This is conspiracy, just so you know. As we continue with Locked on Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day. There's only one more left. It's Indiana versus Miami, Monday, 6:30 Central Time. Right now, every college football game day, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. This isn't just for new customers. This is for everybody. Now, this is what I love about it. I can ride with Miami. I can ride with Indiana, but I still get that extra boost, even if we're talking about something that seems obvious. What about him being black? Right? What about those 2 running backs for Indiana? You want to put some money down on them? Get the profit boost today. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on the Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Make sure you're joining the Everydayer Club. We're going to do live reactions throughout the games on the basketball season, throughout games during baseball. We're going to have different discourse just going back and forth amongst all the TCU fans. I want to talk to you. I want to try to figure out how we can get fan engagement in episodes, but this is necessary, or it is necessary to go through the Discord for this. $5 a month or $50 per year. You get to save 2 months free if you go that route. Just saying. Go ahead and join. It's in the link below. But I think the NFL is encouraging players to stay in college forever. I think the NFL wants college players to stay forever. I seen a stat right before coming on. I didn't check it, didn't verify it, but I saw an interesting stat that there is, I think, a third of the amount of players choosing to come out of college early in this year compared to 2021. That's NIL. A lot of that is NIL as far as early not early enrollees. That's college, high school going to college, but early, I don't know, people, I want to say committing. I don't know why I want to use all this collegiate language right now. Declaring, early declarations, right? People who are declaring from the draft as juniors or redshirt sophomores. But I don't think the NFL is really tripping about that. I don't think the NFL is worried about young players. I actually believe the NFL is looking for older players. And in that, they're encouraging players to stay late. The NIL of it all is going to make it difficult at some point, right? Because you're going to have guys like a top quarterback who maybe isn't going to go number 1, but may go number 7 and says, well, the NIL that I'm getting here is going to be a better contract than I would get if I went to the NFL as a rookie. So that's one thing that's going to work against the league. But I firmly believe that the NFL has 2 reasons for wanting to get these players a little bit older. They want to, not have to pay them as much. And if you're a year later, then maybe I don't have to give you that second contract. Maybe I can hit the little franchise tag and bounce, right? Like maybe I can give you a short-term contract as opposed to a 5-year deal because you are a tad bit older. Nobody wants to spend money. I know I don't. I know you don't. And I can tell you what, NFL owners don't either. They're going to be real tight with those pockets. They don't want to give up any money. They want to be able to spend every single penny they have they want to spend as little of the pennies they have, and they want to spread it out to as many players as they can. So if you get them a year later, you get them a year older, doesn't mean you won't get a second contract or a third contract, but it does make it a little bit harder. because the league also likes to run you out young. Hey, man, that running back 30 years old. But if you get a 30-year-old, or excuse me, a 25-year-old, 24-year-old running back who doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires because he's been bouncing around, he had different things, well, now it's a different conversation. Now I can go get the guy who's a tad bit older, but he still doesn't have a lot of carries. Like, I think Josh Jacobs came in the league with barely any carries. It's one of the reasons I was scared about Ashton Genty, because I felt like he had so many carries under his belt. I was concerned if he was going to wear down quickly. And we'll see. Time will tell. But the NCAA, the coaches have unanimously approved a rule. They just have to get it, or said they want a rule. They have to get it approved by someone else, has to get another check. But they have unanimously approved a rule saying they want to have 9 games be the threshold that you must not surpass in order to get a red shirt. That's crazy to me. They tried to get just 5 years of eligibility, period. I like that. This is what I heard through the grapevine before this report came out. I was hearing that it was going to be 5 years, period. Dead the red shirts, medical, physical, or just not playing, dead it. I like that. That's a good plan, because I don't need you getting your doctorate in playing college ball. I don't. I love when it happens, when someone's actually taking their schooling serious. Like, I appreciate what that can do for people, right? Like, Howard had this one kid who came in from Ohio State. I remember he went to Ohio State. He went to another school. He went to Howard. I think he went to like 3-4 schools, and he ended up playing at. He got his doctorate in school for free under scholarship. I love that. From a human standpoint. From a human standpoint, do everything you can. But from a pure sports and athletic standpoint, I don't need this. Why is TJ Finley going to a different school every single year? Why is TJ Finley going 7 years, 7 schools? Like, why is that the case? That's not the type of development that I want. It's not the type of development the NFL wants. But I do believe they want guys who come in and they're a little bit more seasoned, so they're probably a little bit more acclimated for the game as well. It's a financial thing, but it's also competitive. Because when that guy comes in at 24, I heard so many people tell me Tyler Shuck is good because he's older. But you didn't have any high expectations for him, despite his age. Yes, not this show for that. But it doesn't always have to be quarterbacks. It can be a guy who's at linebacker. The mentality is there. I think it works best at quarterback because quarterback has, depending on your play style, can have less physical demands. Right. So you can play quarterback older. So you stay in school for 6 years. You stay in school for 7 years. You come out and you're 25 years old, 26 years old. That's fine. Because if you're good enough, you can play to your 40. So you can come out late. You can come out 3 years later than your counterparts, but you're still going to play 3-4 years longer than your counterparts. Right. So that's what I think is the case. And with the NFL, they're saying, all right, you go there, you play in a system, you get X amount of starts, you play 40 games. Yeah, come on. You're probably more ready to contribute as a rookie. And from that point, I get it. But you're also probably going to cost less. This is crazy to me. It used to be a point where 5th-year guys was the absolute max. He's a 5th-year senior. Okay. 6th year, super senior. But yeah, these players that we used to criticize have now become the norm. Right? We're talking about, is he a 7th-year player? We're talking about people are campaigning and actually going to court to petition to play a 7th year of college athletics. It used to be 6th-year guys were like, whoa, that's rare. 5th-year guys, you saw a lot. You redshirt, you stay 4 years. That was always normal, right? It wasn't the norm, but it was normal. 6-year was a stretch. Not anymore. Not anymore. And Andre 3000 had this line. He said, alien can blend right on in, which it can. Look again, because I swear I spot one every now and then. It's happening again. Wish I could tell you when. That whole little, not only do I love that bar and that sequence, that applies here. The 6th-year guys are blending in. They're becoming the norm. They're becoming the players that are getting drafted first round. And you're like, oh, yeah, he was a 6-year guy. I think a lot of that has to do with COVID. And when he says blending in, or excuse me, when he says, wish I could tell you when, it's so normal, we don't even point out the 6-year guys anymore. We don't even point out the 5-year guys. The 5 is the new 4. The 6 is the new 5. 7, I don't think is ever going to be the case. That's where the line gets drawn. But let's move forward and wrap up today's episode with a look at TCU men's basketball, who they need to start getting wins. Yeah, you're getting competitive games, but you need to start winning. Let's dive into that as we continue and close out today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, TCU men's basketball is done with their 3-game stretch. They've lost all 3. So Sarah and I talked about what could have been, what should have been prior to the whole stretch. Prior to the Kansas game, she laid out that she felt like they should go 1-2, could go at least 1-2, and could go 2-1. There was no hope of 3-0, but there was also no belief that 0-3 was on the horizon. I think the way that they went 0-3 is a tad bit confusing because on one hand, they were competitive in every single game, but they blew the first one. And that changed how I looked at number 2. But then when you look at how they played in number 3, it's clear to me TCU can compete. TCU can compete with the top teams in this conference. But can they beat the top teams in this conference? I do not believe the answer is yes on a consistent basis. The answer is yes, they can get one. If they upset a team in the Big 12 the Big 12 tournament, I don't believe that you should be overly surprised. But that being said, it's still not a regular occurrence. It's not something you should feel confident in. You look at what TCU has done over the year. They lost to number 6 Michigan. 67-63, close game, competitive. You go and you play number 10, Florida. Knock them off 84-80. You beat Wisconsin. Then you lose to Notre Dame in overtime by 2 points. So like you're seeing these stretch. You went through a stretch of 3 straight games against formidable opponents. You lose to Michigan. You do knock off Florida. You do knock off Wisconsin. You lose to Notre Dame. None of these games are blowouts. Neither the ones you win or lose. Neither one of these games are blowouts. But then you get to conference play and you go against Kansas. You choke that game. You go against Arizona. You're surprisingly competitive, but they still pull away because they're better than you. They are the better team. BYU pulls away. They are the better team, right? But you're in that game every step of the way. You're in that Arizona game. You're kind of in that Arizona game. You're playing catch up most of the game, but you're more competitive than I think a lot of people probably expected you to be. So with that being the case, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, TCU knows how to fight. They were scrapping with Michigan. They were scrapping with Kansas. They should have beat Kansas. They were scrapping with Arizona, scrapping with BYU, but scrappiness is not enough. It's not enough. When you're looking at what this team is doing in this season, there's only so many times that you can be close but no cigar against the top teams and it still be encouraging. Because at first it's like, okay, wow, we can play with them. We can actually be here. We should beat this team. Moral victories can be taken for a while. Now it's time to start winning games because you have to show the ability to close. So as you go and you play Utah, Oklahoma State, Baylor, these are your next 3 games. You need to go 3-0. You need to go 3-0. Utah is 0-4 in the conference play. They are 8-9 in the season. They're the only team in the entire conference to not have an overall winning record. The only one. If you do it, they'll be 500. They'll still be the only team in the conference to not have a winning record. Kansas State could lose, Cincinnati could lose, right? But those are the 2 teams who are 1 game above 500. There's nothing Utah can do to get out of last place other than beat you. You got to go against Oklahoma State, 1-3. You got to go against Baylor, 1-3, and you're one of their already 3 losses. They already lost to you. So, to me, these are games that you have to win because once you go against Houston, you're expecting to lose that game. I'm expecting TCU to lose to Houston. I think that is an acceptable assumption. And that's an acceptable outcome. If you're competitive against Houston, shout out to you, more power. But the point is, just being competitive is no longer enough. Just being competitive does not cut the checks. I don't think that this is something we should just blow past. But at the same time, it's not something that I think is, I'm not going to put a lot of stake in it. Cute story. You're competitive against the number 1 team in the country. You're competitive against a top 10 team or number 11, I believe, actually, team in the country. Cool. But at what point are you going to start winning? Because being competitive and taking these moral victories is not going to earn you any seeding in the Big 12 tournament. Being competitive tells me if you face this team, maybe you could pull it off. But it does not tell me anything more than that. And I can't take that to the Big 12 championship or the Big 12 tournament. So we'll be back next week. We'll cover this Utah game. We'll cover on Monday, TCU women's basketball is going to play Ohio State. We'll do a preview of that game. And we'll talk about the turnovers that have plagued TCU women's basketball. And we may talk about the men's game. I haven't quite decided yet. But until Monday rolls around, in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.